Alright guys, I'm just outstanding in my field. I'm so sorry, that was terrible. Right, let's just get to the painting. We'll be looking at Angron today. I'll split this up into a couple of videos. In this one we'll be going over how to do the red, the green and some of the gold. In part 2 we'll be continuing the gold and I'll also show how to do the face and the cloak. Alright, so we're going to start off with the red armour plates. I'm going to mix up a medium red tone by adding a touch of black to this saturated red colour here. Now I'm using Antares red from Scale Colour, but Games Workshop Mephiston red will work just as well. We'll use that as our base colour, so just go ahead and paint the armour plates. Now you might need to do a couple of coats to get this smooth. The approach we're going to go for here is to start off with a mid-tone, and then work up to our highlight using simple layering, and then we'll shade it down with some glazes. So for our highlight we'll create a transition on the palette between the base colour and our saturated red. Now consistency wise the paint should be just a little thinner than your initial base coat. So we'll start off with a red that's a little brighter than our base colour, and we're just going to draw the paint over the surface so that we're moving the brush in the direction of our highlight, which is going to be at the top of each of these sections as that's where most of the light would be hitting them. So each time we add a new layer we'll take a slightly more vibrant red from the palette and we'll just keep going like this until the last layer is a pure saturated red. This is probably one of the most basic ways to blend, but it's actually pretty effective. You don't really have to rely on crazy difficult techniques all the time to get a really good result. Now for the shading we'll simply put a bit more black into our initial base colour and we'll make a glaze by adding some water. Then we'll draw the glaze down over the surface, building up the shadow. So just build this up over a few layers until you like the look. In order to make the colour a bit more vibrant, we'll make a final glaze, this time with our green tone. Now I'm using Boreal green from Scale Colour. It's kind of like a dark jade or an emerald tone. Now this is going to make your red appear more vibrant and lively. You can see now that I've blocked in the rest of the model in black how much the red pops out at you. I also added a small edge highlight here with a bright orange colour. I used Loganeth Orange from the Games Workshop Edge range. So we'll look at how to do the green straps now. These were based in Boreal green, which we used earlier to help shade the red parts. I'm going to switch things up here and do the shading first. So for that we'll make a glaze with Vallejo Armour Brown. Now if you've never seen any of my previous videos, I just use water to make glazes. So I simply take a small amount of paint and mix in some water until it has the consistency of coloured water. I don't really use any fancy glaze mediums or anything like that, I just stick with water. Now we're going to use that glaze to darken the recessed areas. So just hit any little ripple in the fabric or the areas where the strap is angled in such a way where it wouldn't catch the light. And you're going to do this over a few layers until you like the look. We'll also add a bit more Armour brown to the mix, which is going to thicken the paint up, and we're going to use that to paint a line between the straps. Now to highlight, we're going to mix in some Vallejo Ivory to the green base colour. The good thing about using Ivory is that it tends to retain the vibrancy of the colour and it doesn't really chalk out the way that white can. So we're going to paint this on so that we hit all the raised areas of the straps and also hit the edges to help make them stand out. Keep adding more ivory and start to focus on smaller and smaller areas. When you're painting the edges, don't paint the whole length of each strap. Just hit the edge at the crest of the raised areas where there is a bit of an undulation in the cloth. Once you've finished, you can add another glaze of Armour Brown to any spots you feel need to be darkened down a little. You can see here that I've already painted about half of the gold armour, so we're going to look at how to do that on the other leg. Take some Games Workshop XV88 and thin it down until it's more or less a heavy glaze consistency. You can see that there's still a bit of elasticity in the paint here. That's really what you're looking for. You don't want it so thin that it's just coloured water. You want there still to be a bit of give in the paint. So with a small amount on the brush, pull the bristles over the surface in the direction of your highlight. On these rounded edges here, we'll just try and get the highlight on the corners. On this piece on the side, I'm going to put the highlight in the middle. Now, strictly speaking, it should really be here at the lower edge, but it's going to look quite cool in the centre. So when you're doing non-metallic metals, you're always trying to find a nice balance between what is correct and looks a bit meh, and what is wrong but looks good. For these little lightning bolt details, we'll pull the pigment down to the bottom of each of the zigzag, and here we'll glaze up to the top. So you can see I'm not trying to paint this on as a solid colour, I'm letting the black show through underneath. This gives you an initial transition to help give more contrast later on. So just try and build the colour up until you have a nice transition into the highlight. Make sure the paint is opaque at the highlight, that's going to ensure that the next step doesn't turn muddy. We'll do this little wing here as well, just pull the pigment to the outer edges of each part of the wing. For our first highlight, we'll use Vallejo Japanese Uniform. You can get the same colour by making a 1-to-1 mix of Games Workshop Zandri Dust and Averlund Sunset. And we're going to make this the same consistency you used for the base colour, so a heavy glaze consistency. Now we'll simply repeat the process, pulling the pigment over the surface so that it collects where our highlights are going to be. And we're going to do this in a few layers so that you create a smooth transition. Again, making sure that the colour is opaque at the strongest highlight spot. Now we're going to make quite a big jump in colour by adding some white to the Japanese uniform, and then we're going to repeat the process, this time hitting a smaller surface area. Big jumps in contrast is one of the most important concepts in doing non-metallics. Your first couple of transitions should be quite smooth and subtle, but after that just go nuts with it. It's a bit like layering, except that after the first couple of layers you just jump straight to the edge colour, so you're missing out all the tones leading up to it. Add some more white and we'll do a few more highlights. For our final highlight, we just use pure white. Now you want the consistency of the paint here to be quite thick, so that the white goes on nice and bright. We'll zoom in here a bit so that you can see these a little better. So don't be scared to throw a few tiny little white dots into the darkest areas to help give the illusion of a shiny finish. Alright, so here you can see the final result and it looks pretty cool. In the next video we're going to be going over some of the more complex surfaces on the rest of the legs, so stay tuned for that. Alright guys, so congratulations if you made it this far in the video. I know it's a pretty long one, but it's quite a complex model. Alright, so like and share the video, drop me a subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks again. Bye for now.